Thank you and welcome to the April 7th Learning Lab. And today we have a panel on veterans identity presented by our DEBA chair, Jonni Taylor. Jonni.
Thank you very much, Heather. And to let you all know, it is DEBA, not Diva, but I go by either. Thank you all for being here. To start us off, I'm going to introduce Mr. Bill Hayden to kick us off with some introductory remarks, and take it away, Bill.
Brothers and sisters, the few, the proud, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to concentrate on the few with some numbers. 700,000 troops served during Desert Storm, and the population was 250,000. That's 0.3% of the population. Active duty right now is 1,300,000 troops. That is 0.4% of the population. In Vietnam, 202,500,000 troops were boots on ground in a population of 205 million people. That was only 2% of the population ever got down in the muck. At the present time, there's only 16 million alive veterans. That is only 4.8% of the population. When I was in Vietnam, 69 and 70, every day, 25 to 30 young people like us died every day. Since the mortality rate was 5%, that means 30 times 10, 300 to 500 young people like us were injured and had to be evacuated or taken care of in country. I give you, Jonni, and my friends, back to you, Jonni, and the few. Jonni Taylor.
Thank you very much, Bill. And he said it very poignantly, the few. I know Jeremy and I were like, ooh, the few, the proud, we know this one. And to stop it right there at the few, because so few people do serve. And even when we look at a war like Vietnam, where there was a draft active, it was still such a very small percentage of people who served. I'm going to start this panel with what I hope is an easy question, because we do have two Marines sitting here. And for my folks in the other branches, you all know we eat crayons for snacks. And for those that are watching this, it's a joke. We get it. My other panelists here get it. Marines don't often have the reputation of being the sharpest tool in the shed. Well, I take that back. They use us as the sharpest tool in the shed, but sometimes not so much here. I think that we are really smart in the Marine Corps. We just choose not to use it. So thank you all for being here. I will begin by asking name, rank, what branch you served in, and how long were you in? And we will start it off with, I'm just going to go in the order of my panel on my screen. So we'll start with Jeremy.
Well, good morning. My name is Jeremy Taylor. I was a Staff Sergeant in the Marine Corps. I joined January of 2001, got out in February of 2011, so a little over 10 years. What was the other part?
Nope, that was it.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Jesse, name, rank, branch, and time in service.
Good morning, everyone. Name's Jesse Chari. I was a specialist, E4 in the Army. I did 3.5 years from 2015 to 2018.
And Erica.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erica. I joined the Navy and I did 5.5 active duty years, and I currently still serve in the reserves. And I was a E5 in the Navy.
Thank you. And finally, Bill.
Air Force captain, exactly 2 years, but 368 days, 7 hours and 10 minutes on the ground in Southeast Asia.
Thank you. And thank you all for your service. So now we're going to get into a funner question. If you did enlist, why did you enlist? And how did you choose your branch? And we'll go back to Jeremy on this.
So mine's a little complicated. Went to a small high school, small town, Texas, and I wanted out. And the best way I saw out was joining the military. And I went to go sign up with the Navy, and they offered me to apply for a scholarship while I was there. So I applied for an NROTC scholarship. Then went to college on an NROTC scholarship, and I hung out with the Marine enlisted guys, the prior service guys. I hung out with the Marine officers way more than I should have. And then had a little too much fun in college and got kicked out, and went back to Texas and bounced around at jobs. Didn't really like much what I was doing, and I kept running into the Marine Corps recruiter. I ran into him 4 different times in 4 different places on just random situations. And I started talking to him, and I decided that it was something I wanted to do and get out of where I was at.
Good of an answer as I've heard. And that is not an uncommon answer you would hear from a lot of veterans. I needed out. I had a friend in the Marine Corps who was from small town Nebraska. And he used to joke, if you didn't have a family farm, if you didn't get a job at the John Deere factory, your other 2 options were go to Last Chance Cowboy College, aka Laramie County Community College in Wyoming, or you join the military. So not an uncommon story we hear. Thank you, Jeremy. And same question to Jesse. Why did you choose to enlist, and how did you choose your branch?
I chose to enlist because school wasn't always my best subject growing up. I always struggled with it. After high school, I tried the community college route. It was not for me at the time. So I chose to join the military, and I chose Army because my grandfather was my great grandfather was a paratrooper World War II, and then and during my time when I was thinking about joining, my uncle joined the Army same time, so it just felt like if I was doing it and I had 2 relatives that already did Army, I might as well just do Army as well.
And another very common answer, sometimes we need to grow up a bit before school makes sense to us. You know, you do the work, you get through high school, and then you're like, now what? I'm very much similar to you. Not that I struggled with school so much, but honestly, it was just having the ability to afford it. And I was working full time, taking 1 class a semester. Well, this is going to take forever. It did take forever. Side note, but that's okay. So thank you for sharing. And Erica, same question. Why did you choose to enlist, and how did you choose your branch?
Well, I did Army ROTC in high school. So for all 4 years of high school, so I enjoyed the military. I was not liking school, so I figured if I really liked the military, might as well try to join the military. And then I had a close family friend who was in Marines, and so he helped guide me to each different branch and see what my ultimate goals were, which my main goal was trying to see as much of the world as possible. And so I chose the Navy, and I got to see a fair amount of the world in just 5 active duty years, and I still get that chance to kind of see the world. So yeah.
Thank you. And I, as a former Marine, I'm telling you right now, I'm very jealous because I was looking at the Navy. I said, I want to get on that boat. They didn't let women get on the boats in my time. Do you know when they started letting women on boats? 9 months after I joined the Marine Corps. This is my sour face. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for your service. Finally, Mr. Bill, please tell me, how did you end up in the Air Force and like,
Yeah,
or how,
I'm glad you didn't use the word volunteer. We didn't have any, we were all drafted. And I mean, all in my medical school class, everybody was drafted. In my internship class, 100% of us ended up in Vietnam. Now there was a tradition. Everybody in my town during the Second World War was drafted and went away to war. Some didn't come home. One of my uncles was in the ship right behind the Arizona. The smoke over blew his ship and it got underway to be sunk in Pearl Harbor. And he went to war for 3.5 years. So there was a tradition, but at my era it was draft. And the job I was in, everybody went and ended up in Vietnam. No volunteers. But we didn't fight it. Everybody was in the same boat.
well, we all appreciate your service, and it is rough because the rest of us here got to make a choice. Bill did not, but Bill, you went over, I'm assuming you were medic, field doctor.
Yeah, I was a doctor, yeah.
All right. So my next question, this is where we're going to get into something a little weird. Are there any questions that you get asked by people that you wish they wouldn't ask you about your service, about your branch, about why this, why that? Is there any questions that you get asked that you wish people wouldn't ask? And I'll go ahead and open it up to my panel, see if anyone has an answer to this rather than just call you out.
Yes, I have a question.
Wait, we're
Bill,
not to that part yet, Judy. I was opening to my panel to ask. So give us just a little bit. So any of you have an answer to that one? Something you get asked you wish people wouldn't ask you?
Yeah,
Go for it,
my
Bill.
daughter just got out of the Army and she was a combat engineer. And she would share the fact that the Army referred to Air Force as the chair force. And so we had, and you guys probably understand, we had a lot of fun, and I really rather enjoyed that banter that we have back and forth. And you in the service know there's bantering about the other services and their strengths and weaknesses, and it's actually one of the fun things that you get to enjoy about interaction with other services. Jonni.
I take no offense when, you know, Army, Air Force, and Navy call us Marines crayon eaters, but it all is in the delivery. Just letting you know. Don't want to cross us. Anyone else? Any questions that you get asked that you wish people wouldn't ask or makes you uncomfortable when they ask it?
From the Marine Corps side, it doesn't really bother me, but I know I've got a lot of friends that they ask if you ever shot anybody, if you ever killed anybody, because a lot of my friends have been in combat at this point, and it makes them very uncomfortable. But the idea is that is kind of the point of the military. You know, whether we're defending or we're attacking, the point is to kill the enemy before they kill you. And a lot of people just don't really get that. And you could be in a similar situation and never join the military. First responders are in that situation. My sister's a nurse and she works in an emergency room. Not saying she's going out shooting anybody, but she's seen a lot more things than I have. And she's never once been in the military. So it's an individual reaction to the question, but it's one that you probably shouldn't ask until you really get to know the person.
Agreed. And I think, if you asked me that, I would say, well, no, because I did serve during an active war. I'm a Gulf War veteran myself, but I did not have to shoot anyone because I was not in a combat zone. That doesn't mean it's still not an awkward question, because now I'm wondering what you think about my brothers and sisters who serve and have served, because that's a weird question. And I do have a list of, does anyone else have anything to add to it?
I would like, this is between us now. That's an issue for us. You know, even as a doctor, I was way out in the boonies, and I had my own M16, and I had flak jacket, and I had to come to the point, and I'm a peace lover and a physician. I came to the point that if I needed to kill, I would have to save my life. I'm curious about how you face that. If you've thought about that, if the time came, would you? It was clear to me I was going to use that thing if I was in a situation.
I mean, agreed. We're all trained to do that in some sense. And that's, as those watching can see, even our medical staff, they're trained, they're issued a weapon because your first job is defending the country in whatever position you're put in at the time.
I'm not proud of it, but that's the way I felt and then feel today instead of in that situation.
I think most of us do. I see slow head nods. Like, yeah, pretty much. All right, so next question. Are there any, so we were talking about this just a minute ago, how we do infight, right? Marines tease the Navy, the Navy will tease the Army. We all tease the Air Force because the rest of us wished we had joined the Air Force. They have the best food. I'm looking at
no, it's not true. It's not true that we don't have the best food.
It might not have been, I don't know, because I'm looking at.
No, he's right. They don't have the best food, but they've got the ability to order the best food.
You know, I was on one side of the base was the Air Force, and the other side was the Marine base. And I got to tell you, the Navy was bringing in all the food, and if we wanted to get a good meal, we went over to that Marine officer's base and got the best food once every few weeks.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. See, you just said the magic O word, and that is officer. I think everyone else on this panel was enlisted.
Well, that's okay.
Chip beef on toast was a delicacy.
Okay. You mean strawberries and cream and steak?
No.
But the Navy was bringing in all the food.
Yeah.
And we were,
right, so
by the way, when we were taking you out, when you were injured.
I know the Air Force flies us everywhere. The Navy boats us everywhere. The Army drives us everywhere. Dang. That's okay. We got your back, brothers and sisters. I'll append this later. But so we were talking about teasing each other, but are there any stereotypes that get applied to you based on the branch of service you're in, or even just being a veteran in general, that people have or you've seen or noticed that bother you, or you just kind of shake your head at?
I feel like it's just a natural camaraderie. Like we're brothers and sisters, and we just take it with a grain of salt. That's how we're trained, is like to enjoy that camaraderie of each branch. And I mean, we all have each other's backs, so I think it's okay to have that joking, on the back end. And I don't believe a lot of us take offense to it. I mean, I personally don't. So, what
if it comes from a civilian?
No, I mean, because I would feel like they're not as experienced compared to those who have served. They don't see the things that we have seen. So how can you judge them based on what they haven't seen? So I take it with a grain of salt. I think the most thing that I get offended with is people thinking as a female vet that I'm not an actual vet because they look at females and they're like, oh, you served? No, you didn't. And I think that's like the most offensive I can get. But at the same time, I can understand that not everybody looks like they served, you know? So, yeah.
No, I mean, Jeremy was obviously a Marine. He's got the haircut and shirt to prove it. No one ever assumes I served. What
I
about
had
you,
the
Jen?
joy of
Oh,
I,
go
I
ahead,
had the
Bill.
joy of working in the VA for 3 years, so I got a chance to experience the incredible esprit de corps and brother and sisterhood of thousands of vets, which it's an amazing togetherness.
What about you, Jesse? Any input on that one?
No, I think we hit it. I think, it's for me, it's I don't really civilians, like if you're, I don't know, because I know some civilians have like they're not military in the military, but they're military affiliated. So if like if you're a child or maybe a parent and like the jokes and things like that, that's I think that's fine. But like when you come from no affiliation and you're over here like calling Marines crayon eaters, or you join the army because you're a dumbass, like, or you know what I mean? Because the Navy or the Air Force wouldn't accept you. Then it's like, all right, buddy, take it easy. But I think for the most part, I think most civilians stay in their lane. Uh, but you will get those guys that see stuff on the internet and think it's okay to throw it around.
Oh, I definitely agree. And it is one of those where if you get the joke, say the joke. But if you don't know, it's probably best to not say anything. It's a kind of a fine line. If you have a good friend that's in the brand, like is a Marine, and you call them a crayon eater because you saw the memes and they explained it to you and you get the joke and you think it's funny and your friend doesn't care, but you probably don't want to be saying that to random. Well, okay, Marines probably will just munch on our crayons and keep trucking, but right.
Do you have
So
you feeling that people don't understand you? My son-in-law was combat engineer too, and when he got back from Afghanistan, he just said, nobody cares, nobody understands. My answer to him was, there's no way that they can understand because we're in the 2%, and 98% never went through basic, never got on an airplane to go to the other side of the world, never deployed, never knew what it was to shoot anything. So there's no reason that people can understand our experience. I don't expect people to. Back to you.
Thank you. And I think that's why it's good to have things like this, where it is a forum where people can understand the different facets, and we all come from different MOSs, which stands for military occupational specialty. I know they call it something different in every branch, but it is ultimately the job we have. And there's everything from, cook to pew pew shooter to, engineers to military police to, I was an administrative clerk, but guess what? I was still one of the best shots in my unit. They didn't let women do a lot of stuff when I joined. Sorry. What was your MOS, Erica? Or what is your MOS? Because you are still reserve.
So I was originally a cook and then I changed rates to be an admin person. So now I'm in the office. So YN.
Honestly, admin where it's at, because everyone they tease us for being admin, but admin is everyone's best friend as soon as they're getting TOD orders or some kind of extra paycheck, or they're getting to go on some cool deployment. All of a sudden then you want to be our friends.
Completely
It's
agree.
It's not like the docs or the cook. Honestly, as a cook, if you're field cooks, when you're in the field, if you were just like, hi, bestie, is there any extra coffee this morning? So field cooks.
We had that a lot on deployments, especially if you work in the bigger kitchens on the ship. Yes, you'd have those people who would want you to make them special food. And I'm like, if you do this, will you do my laundry? They're like, sure. So, it was definitely good leeway on deployments when you didn't have time to like do other stuff. So
I should have been a cook. Dang it. What about you, Jesse? What was your MOS?
I was 11 Bravo infantryman.
Excellent. So he was a pew pew shooter.
Bang bang.
Yeah. And Jeremy?
I actually held 2 MOSs. I was a refrigeration mechanic and I was military police.
And then we all already know Bill was the doc. He was the one that got to patch up the young men out there. So not an
Anybody
easy
here?
gig.
Anybody here deliver the mail? Which was everybody's.
I was
You did? Erica, you delivered the mail?
yeah, that's part of admin is you have to deliver the mail sometimes, especially on a
Do you
ship.
guys want to share anything about, I don't know, a mail call for us was like the lions being fed, man.
It was
I
crazy.
was.
Yeah.
Did they still have, so now Erica and I are separated by a couple of decades in our service. Did you have to do the mail clerk training and get certified?
Yeah, and since I was squadron, we each squadron did their own mail, but when there was mail call on the ship, it was you had to get the racks, go to the hangar bay, get, separate the mail from each, different division in your squadron and then take it to each division, and that was just crazy, especially on the ship. It was a lot.
How long did it take you from a letter to leave the ship for an answer to come back to the troop, would you guess? Because it was, if we got a letter and I sent it out, I wouldn't hear anything back for at least 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the, and we couldn't call because it was like we could call home for 5 minutes every month.
It would depend on when there would be RAS, replenishment at sea. So it depends on when we had that. Sometimes it was every 2 weeks, sometimes it was once a month. So honestly, it would depend on that.
So for those of you who don't know, because handling United States mail is a federal job, which means that if you touch someone else's mail or you go into my mailbox, the people that come stick flyers for open houses or I do gardening services or whatever they're pitching to me, they always tape those to my door or stick them in the crack of my door because they are not legally allowed to put it through the mail slot in my door. That would be a federal offense. That is for federal mail delivery only. So in order to be a mail clerk in the military, you had to be trained and certified, and we had our little extra card that we had that said, I am allowed to handle federal mail. Fun fact.
Do you guys have any mail experience? I want to tell you, my father wrote me a letter every day during my Vietnam tour. And he put the sports section from the Tribune in Chicago in it. Now, of course, you didn't come every day. I'd get big piles of how the Cubs were doing or not doing, or the Bears. But can you imagine that? A letter from your father every day, 365 days?
It was definitely different in our time. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wondered, with modern technology, would things have changed over the years? Like, if you were on a ship these days, like obviously when Bill was in there wouldn't be the same technology. But these days, if somebody wanted to contact somebody ever, is it easier or harder now? Or
it's completely easier because my first time on a ship, we still had payphones on the ship, so you'd have to buy like phone cards. And then you're able to call home on a payphone. Nowadays, now they have Wi-Fi. Like towards my end of my active duty, I was on the Roosevelt when COVID hit, and they were like, "All right, they need Wi-Fi. They can't go home. We can't contact their families or whatever." So, my last deployment at the Roosevelt, they gave us Wi-Fi, and now I hear they still have Wi-Fi, and you can easily access the internet, and you can easily call home. So the payphones on the ship are basically obsolete. So yeah, it's definitely a lot easier because when I first started, I had to go to my admin office and say, hey, can I email or make a phone call? And it lasts 5 minutes. And now we can do it from the hangar bay easy. So it's definitely a lot easier.
Thanks. And I think it would be, but I wasn't 100% sure if we were allowed to use, say, WhatsApp or something like that.
I'm sorry.
No, you need,
I just wasn't sure. Like I talked to Bill the whole time on WhatsApp, so I didn't know if you'd be allowed for security reasons to use that on a ship.
Yeah, certain areas they would definitely secure the Wi-Fi. But for the most part, if you were in a secure area or a secure location out to sea, like then you were able to use it. As long as it wasn't interfering with other people's work, then it was fine.
Okay, thanks.
man, we didn't even have the internet when I was in. All right. I guess, well, I mean, we've been doing this already. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we open it up for more questions from our folks watching?
But one thing I wanted to add was I appreciate that Jesse was a grunt, as Marines call them. And one thing that was pointed out to me by my own father was that when we joined, whether officer or enlisted, we all signed a document that said we agree to give our entire selves up to including our lives for our service. Now, not everybody cashed in that check, morbid way to put it, but we all agreed to that, yes, regardless of what our job was. And I did 2 tours in Iraq. The first tour I did in Iraq as a refrigeration mechanic, which seems silly, but it was the push to up armor all the Humvees. Most of the Humvees didn't have up armor on them. So the base I was at was cycling through Humvees that come in, we'd put them all in there. And then somebody realized, hey, with all this armor on it, it's hot. And so now we were retrofitting with air conditioners in all the Humvees. Well, the base I was at got mortared twice a week. When I first got there, it spaced out to about once a month by the time I left. And the most casualties we had there were admin, because the mortars hit the dining facility during meal hours. And so the combat guys weren't the ones that got injured. It was the admin, the box kickers, and some of the mechanics. So it's, your life is at risk regardless of what your job is.
Yeah, good point. You got guys that are sitting behind the armor. They have the Kevlar on. They're actively looking for, you're doing your job. My job is I filed the paperwork and now I'm just going to sit here and have lunch. Or I will say my favorite Afghan Iraq story. This was early wartime. There was a woman who was military police for the Air Force. And she was in charge of security for an Army supply unit. And they got attacked, and she almost single-handedly held off an entire insurgents against this Army supply unit. Now, that's not saying the Army supply guys obviously had their weapons and everything, but her job was to be their security. And she did get I think it was a Bronze Star, Silver Star, I forget. But she got one of those fancy medals. And I remember when that happened, and to Erica's point about being a woman veteran, when I saw that, I like tears. And I was just like, go girl, dang it, why did it have to be the Air Force though?
Just to point out some inconsistencies at the airbase I was, guess what was covered in cement revetments? It was the jets. And the barracks for the troops was rickety wood. So when the base I was at was called Rocket City for a reason. The jets were safe at all times from the rockets. The humans, not so much. And there were rockets that hit those barracks too often.
Those of us in the Marine Corps are saying, you got wood? We just got a tent half. And not even a whole tent, just a half of one. Jesse's laughing too. Did you guys?
Your jets on the other side were under the same cement.
Jesse, did you guys get tent halves? Or did you get a whole tent?
It just depends. Like, and we in the field, I was in a striker unit, so we had our sleeping bags, and on deployment, ours was a little different. We had tents on base, but most of our missions were off base, and they were with we were training the Afghan police. So we kind of stayed. They got like this new remodeled, I guess, police station. They kind of had their own barracks. It wasn't anything like fancy, anything, but it was a structure. It was a building.
Nicer than sleeping on the floor.
Yeah, we had some
Where in
cots there. Yeah,
Where in Afghanistan were you deployed?
Helmand Province.
So the hard helmet.
By the time I got there, the Marines already did what needed to be done. I was just there for training and cleanup.
Yeah, sure you
Hey,
were.
don't say just. Never say just. I learned this. Jeremy actually drilled this in my head because I would say I'm just admin. And he
Yeah,
says
that's
never
not
say
true.
just.
Never
Do
say
not
that.
do not downplay your service, because even if you really were in during a peaceful time, you still signed that paper, you still were willing to put it out there, and you still did a job that, as Bill mentioned at the beginning, no one else wants to do, but it's got to be done. All right.
Hey, I
At
want
this
to
time,
know if you think about what you swore to when you made your oath on when you were inducted into the military. Because I think about the fact that we swore to support and protect our Constitution.
Yep.
And I think about that often. That was what we swore to. John.
thank you. All right, at this time, I'm going to open it up to, we have a few minutes. Any questions from our folks in the gallery? I know Judy had a question. Sorry for making you hold that question, Judy. Anyone have a question? There we go.
Yeah, I have a question. Bill, you mentioned that everybody in your class was drafted. However, I had read that some people went to college to escape the draft. So there's something. Could you explain that?
Well, this is my medical school class, and yes, there were people who escaped the draft, but there were an awful lot who didn't. And I don't hold anything against anybody that escaped the draft for conscientious purposes, because there were reasons that it was not a just war. But the majority of people went because they felt obligated to serve their country.
And it was probably, I know they went after folks with certain skill sets or that were learning certain things. For example, Bill was training to be a doctor. Guess what they needed a lot of, because we were throwing so many young men and a lot of women who went over as supply carriers, pilots, and nurses. They also gave their lives in Vietnam. So we were throwing a lot of bodies out there, and we needed a lot of doctors, and you got to get them somewhere.
And they were even paying some people to be a doctor, knowing that they will come out as doctor to serve the military. That was the conditional.
Well, there were, yes, that's true. There was a plan to like ROTC, for all kinds of people.
And my dad told me that that's how he became a doctor.
Yeah. Some of you, at least one of you at least went through ROTC, right? Or a couple of you.
Erica went to ROTC and Jeremy part-time.
I went through high school though, so not college.
Still ROTC?
Yes.
So I did a year and a half of ROTC in college before I got into a disagreement with the Navy commander.
Rebecca has her hand raised.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I only have one bar, so I hope you can hear me. I have several friends that are veterans, few in the family as well. And it's a mixed reaction of when you say thank you for your service. And I've noticed some get very, very offended. And it's hard to navigate because I want to show respect and that honor and just acknowledge that. So, is there a better way to go about that? What do you guys recommend?
So one thing I learned was when somebody tells me thank you for your service, the best response for me is just to say thank you for your support. Because a lot of people just assume a lot of things by saying that. And I know people that do say thank you for the service, are sincere about it. They just don't understand what they're thanking me for. Or that's just a cliche thing to be like, oh, he's a veteran, I need to thank you for his service, but they have no idea what for. They only know I'm a veteran. They don't know what I did, what I do, or anything like that. So the best thing to do is for the veteran side is to say thank you for your support. And unfortunately, I can't tell you how every veteran feels about when somebody says that, because it's more of an individual thing. I've got a buddy that is a combat vet, has several combat action ribbons. Somebody says thank you for your support. You've just now opened it up, and he's going to tell you every story he can think of, everything he did. You're going to be stuck there for the next 2 hours listening to him talk about everything he did. But then I also have friends that, like you said, say thank you for your support, and they get a little twitchy, and they're like, no, I'm done with this conversation already, and trying to walk away.
Hey, Jeremy, you're a combat vet too, you know, and Jesse, is the definition by the VA is that anyone who served in a theater during an active yeah. When there's an active combat going on. So you are too.
I was never in a spot where I actually got a combat action ribbon. I was on some details that we got shot at. I was at bases that got mortared, and I was in places, but I was never in a spot where, hey, we were allowed to return fire, and that was the main thing to get a combat action ribbon for us. So I was on a convoy that had to go from the base we were at, which was on the southeast side of Baghdad, back to the north side, and we would take fire, and they told us just to keep going. We weren't supposed to stop. So multiple situations like that.
According to the VA, you are a combat vet.
There's combat veteran, but I think Jeremy's referring to those that have that combat action ribbon where they have been fired upon and fired back. And when we talk about our brothers and sisters who might have, who might have the more severe, who might have more severe PTSD or, from some of the things they saw and did. That's usually, what comes to people's minds when they think combat vet. But absolutely, to my folks who did serve in those zones, even if you're on a ship in those waters, you are a combat veteran.
That's the combat infantry badge, right? For the Army gives,
Yeah. So, but back to Rebecca's point, and I can answer a little bit on this. Some veterans don't like to identify as veterans. But Jonni, that's weird. They served. You're a veteran. You can't undo that. Actually, when we fill out forms, it asks, do you want to identify as a veteran? Because some people don't. Some people did their time and they want to forget that part of their life ever happened.
Yeah, that's weird.
Does Erica or Jesse have any input on that one?
I mean, I agree because, for me personally, I don't feel like I did enough. I'm considered a combat veteran as well, but I was out in the ocean. So how do I say I'm a combat veteran, So I don't like to consider that. But yeah, I don't feel like I did enough being part of admin, being a CS. Like, yeah, I know one person, like everybody has their job and everybody puts in, to the success of the mission. But when you're on a ship full of 5,000 people, you just don't feel like you do enough. So I don't feel like I did enough, even though I'm still serving. I still don't feel like I'm doing enough to be considered an actual veteran. So that's why I get like iffy but I still want to make sure that I do acknowledge, like, well, I still served, I still signed that paper, I still committed myself, I'm still committing myself, and it's not easy. The experience is not easy. It's not for the faint, you know, it's a challenge. Each branch is different, but each branch definitely has its own challenges, and that's not to be overlooked lightly.
Hey, can I tell you something? I've known vets from Oshawa Valley, Hamburger Hill, Quezon, who they don't feel that they did enough. So you're among people who never feel that they did enough.
All right.
Thank you.
We're about at time, so I'm going to wrap this up with questions to never ask a veteran. Some of you can nod if you think I'm off on one of these, but this is my list. Have you ever killed someone? We've already touched on this one. Just don't. And this goes for first responders as well, and that includes our police officers, SWAT, FBI, etc. If you meet someone, don't ask. Because number one,
And intensive care physician. Don't ask,
yes.
please.
Oh my God, please don't do that. So did you ever like let someone die on your operating table? Not a cool question.
You're not supposed to ask.
Yeah, but for folks like myself and Erica, where we were like, well, we were admin, but I just told you a story about an Air Force MP who probably never thought she would see action in war. And it doesn't matter. But you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh, is a veteran only someone who's ever shot a gun? So it's it makes we all have that imposter syndrome. And I think that's what Erica was hitting on. But so don't ask that question. Or how many have you killed? What did it feel like to kill someone? Just know. Let's just leave the killing off the table. What kind of action did you see in combat? Again, I mean, unless you know the vet and you feel comfortable with them and they've been pretty open about their experiences, don't ask questions like that of someone you just met. Do you agree with the policies and politics? Also, again,
Can I go back? It's okay for a vet to ask another vet. I learned that at the VA, that one vet to another can ask. And it's taken in a much different spirit than a non-vet asks.
Correct. Don't ask about, do you agree with the politics? Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if any one of us are Republican, Democrat, or Independent. It does not matter. It is a lawful order and we sign that paper and we have to do it. And it doesn't matter if we agree or not. So please don't ask. I mean, unless again, if you know the vet and you want to talk politics and that's the topic of the day, but don't ask. How could you leave your family for so long? Here's another one. Can't you just get over it? So people who suffer from PTSD or someone who had traumatic experiences while they served, just don't ask. Here's one, and I don't know if Erica has ever been asked this, but I have been asked this. Were you raped when you were in? Yeah, no, don't ask. Don't ask. Because if I had been raped, well, gee whiz, thanks for ripping that scab open. And if I haven't, now I'm just very confused and kind of uncomfortable. So don't ask. And finally, I'm glad you made it back in one piece. That seems innocuous, but really you're saying, I'm glad you made it back, but you're acknowledging that a lot of people didn't. And maybe it's best to just say, thank you for your service. And if a veteran just looks at you and goes, then say, never mind, how's the weather? We are all Toastmasters. We do impromptu speaking. We do our table topics. We know how to pivot. We know how to talk on the fly. We can cover up for ourselves if we ever make a faux pas. But I hope this gave you a little bit about different veteran identities. We have 5 people here who served, all at different times. Now, Jeremy, Jesse, and Erica are all Afghan-Iraq war veterans, but Jeremy was first half, and Jesse and Erica were the later half of the years. I was Gulf War, Bill was Vietnam. we all had very different experiences.
But many the same.
Yes. And honestly, it doesn't matter because I got your back 20% because I'm busy eating crayons. Does anyone have any final thoughts? And we're going to wrap this up so they can have a break before the next session starts. No, we're all good. I have one last question though for Jesse and Erica both. Did you ever have to wear mop suits for any length of time while you were in? And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's MOPP. So feel free to Google it because it'll take too long to explain.
Yeah, we did actually in NTC. It was terrible. I mean, it wasn't like an all day thing or anything, but it was like a couple times, like I forget what the time limit is, but you got 45 seconds, put it on. You know what I mean? And you're just walking with it around for like an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is, and you're just like, this is miserable. Especially in NTC in the middle of summer. You're just like, I don't want to do this. But yeah.
What is NTC for our non?
Oh yeah, NTC is like a training center in California. I think it's the high desert. Over at Fort Irwin.
Jeremy's laughing. He knows where it is.
You
I know
go
where it
over
is
there and
too.
do like a training cycle, usually before deployment. But yeah, that was my experience.
All right.
Yeah,
Luckily, I didn't have to wear one, so no, I got lucky and missed out on it. So
Jeremy started saying something.
Oh, I work on a Navy base now that's up in the high desert. So we're actually a little bit north of Fort Irwin. So I know exactly where you're talking about.
All right.
Not a fun
But
place.
for Jeremy already knows this because I rub it in his face every chance I get. But for Jesse, as miserable as you were, you are welcome because the prior mop suits were a bit like that scene in A Christmas Story where the little kid gets dressed up by his mom and says, I can't move my arms. Those were the GS-71s. So you're welcome because I spent 2 weeks in a mop testing those mop suits that you suffered in that were half the weight and half the thickness of the original mop suits that I started with. So
Thank you for your service.
thank you, everyone. Thank you to my panel, to Jeremy, Jesse, Erica, and Bill. Sorry to the Coast Guard folks out there because we let them play with us, but I mean, I guess they're technically a branch, right? I'm just glad Claire's not here. Jeremy knows who she is. She would throw a shoe at me.
Yeah, next time you're gonna have to try to find somebody in the Space Force now.
I'm old. I forget that's a thing. Thank you all. Thank you to my panel. And I will pass it back to Heather who can stop recording. Thanks for coming, everyone.
thank you.